Who's a wholesome celebrity who's actually kinda badass? Before we start with the first story, please hit subscribe and ring the notification bell to stay updated with us. Story 1. Fred Mr. Rogers, who pulled up on Congress, demanded funding for PBS and got it. Gangster. I read a great story here on Reddit about a guy who ran into Miss Rogers in an elevator at the college the guy was attending. Miss Rogers was there to speak. The guy had just lost his grandpa and idolized Miss Rogers as a kid. He awkwardly introduced himself in the elevator, and Miss Rogers got off the elevator with him and chatted with him for a while. They talked about their grandpas. The guy was crying. Miss Rogers always had time for people. He cared. It was really that simple. Story 2. Betty White. Huge animal advocate and lover. Plus, she stood up for a black dancer that she had on her show back in the 1950s. The network threatened to fire and cancel her show because she wanted to showcase this man's talents, and she said, "I'm sorry, but he stays. Live with it." She then gave him more airtime, and her show was cancelled. Not long after, the Civil Rights Act was passed. After Hurricane Katrina wiped out the aquarium in New Orleans, she personally chartered a jet to take the penguins to the Monterey Bay Aquarium for safekeeping. I visited the MB Aquarium after I heard that, and it was happy chaos in the penguin enclosure. It cost her $50,000. FedEx ferried them back and got a lot of PR for it. But Betty was super quiet about what she did. It was reported in some local paper in Monterey and mentioned briefly by a keeper at the aquarium there. Story 3. Steve Buscemi. Volunteer fireman. Steve Buscemi is such an awesome guy. A great actor who is selective about the roles he takes on, a volunteer firefighter, a man who is so secure in himself that he never felt the need to change anything about his unique look, although he could have probably easily afforded to do so. A solid director. Check out Trees Lounge, an indie film he directed and starred in, and by all accounts a down-to-earth guy. He did a Reddit AMA a while back, and I remember it being very wholesome. He's also done a lot to help first responder survivors who have suffered horrible medical issues due to the dust/chemicals at Ground Zero. Years he's been a part of organizing to get people help, and he narrated a documentary highlighting the issue and injustice those heroes have endured. Story 4. I'm seeing a lot of good ones already, but I'll toss in a surprising one. Master Sergeant Robert Norman Ross. He eventually retired from military life after a 20-year career and went on to star in the public TV show The Joy of Painting with Bob Ross. I remember reading somewhere that he felt he had yelled enough for his lifetime, and that's why he used that soft and soothing voice on the show. Story 5. Audie Murphy. Most decorated soldier of World War II, and possibly the most decorated American soldier ever. After the war, he had a successful acting career. Throughout his career, he refused to star in anything related to alcohol or cigarettes because he knew little kids were looking up to him. He also was very open about suffering from what we now know as PTSD and advocated for better treatment for other vets suffering from it. Best part though, dude was a massive drug addict after the war, but he locked himself in a motel room for I believe a week, but possibly longer, and quit completely cold turkey. He's someone everyone should at least read the wiki entry for. Really was operating at a higher level than us. Talk about someone who should be more of a known name. Story 6. I got to meet Terry Crews at a Tough Mudder obstacle course-like event. He was the kindest and sweetest dude despite being built like a monster and looking intimidating at first. Terry Crews just seems like an all-around lovely and inspiring human. He has some great philosophy and is very intelligent. Great actor, dancer, and athlete. I met him briefly during a teleprompter gig. He was so sweet. I felt horrible because the warehouse gave me crap equipment, so during a live event, the screen started glitching out. But he kept his cool, and the show went on. He is one of my favorite celebs that I've met after that encounter. Story 7. Sir Christopher Lee. was an absolute gentleman who hunted down and killed Nazi war criminals. For the final few months of his service, Lee, who spoke fluent French, Italian, and German, among other languages, was seconded to the Central Registry of War Criminals and Security Suspects. Here, he was tasked with helping to track down Nazi war criminals. I honestly would really like a movie about him. You could like multiple movies. You could have a Bond-type movie like Bourne Identity or Body of Lies. Then later you could do a movie about his metal career. Two wildly different movies, but still the same dude. I watched that short video about when Peter Jackson wanted him to scream when he gets stabbed by Warm Tongue. He told Peter that's not what people sound like when they get stabbed. Then he showed him what it sounds like to be stabbed in the back, and Peter Jackson didn't really question him after that. Story 8. Dolly Parton. She's amazing, and she doesn't take crap from anyone. She said growing up she thought the ladies of evening always dressed so pretty. They had big hair and pretty clothes. So when she started out, a lot of her clothes were like that. Because she emulated what she thought was beautiful. She grew up dirt poor. Her song Coat of Many Colors is a true testament of that. Kids picking on you because you had nothing. So as she had money, she wanted to wear flashy clothes like those ladies she admired so much. I have always loved her. I too grew up dirt poor. I loved country before it was cool to do so. I got to meet her once in the 80s. I grew up in Appalachia, so I could relate to much of what she too went through growing up. Dirt poor, huge family. She has no kids but grew up in a huge family. Story 9. Keanu Reeves. Not only is he an amazing actor, but he also does his own stunts and has a heart of gold. Plus, have you seen him ride a motorcycle? Badass. I think he has a strict policy of not doing his own stunts and has set the record straight many times. He's afraid if he gets injured, production shuts down and thousands are out of a job due to his hubris. He does his own fight choreography and trains a lot for it. But you'd never see him jumping from a third-story window or getting hit by a car. I think Keanu is an awesome person and clearly a badass. But I wouldn't say he's an amazing actor, to be honest. He works well in certain roles and certainly has screen presence, but his acting skills aren't among his many wonderful qualities. Story 10. Michelle Yeoh. Really pretty known in Malaysia that she does multiple volunteer works and advocacy programs that campaigns human rights, especially for the flood disaster reliefs, especially in 2017 and also 2021. Where she had helped clean out the debris with less publicity. She had also done the same thing too during the 2015 Nepal earthquake disaster, where she was part of the relief team for rescue efforts. Also, she is part of the Olympic Committee members and a UN ambassador. She was one of the rare ones who did a lot for the Asian community, not just in films and media, but also in real life. Story 11. Hedy Lamarr. One of the most beautiful women ever who also happened to be a verifiable genius and invented spread spectrum technology, frequency hopping then, which made possible a wide range of wireless communications technologies, including Wi-Fi, GPS, and Bluetooth. And they named a character in Blazing Saddles after her. She was a talented inventor, but she didn't invent spread spectrum RF or anything directly related to Wi-Fi. Marconi and Tesla had both experimented with frequency hopping 4 decades prior to Hedy's idea. The modern system for digital frequency hopping used in Wi-Fi was created by the Jet Propulsion Lab, now part of NASA. Here's what Hedy actually did. Her husband was an arms dealer, and she found out that the military was worried about enemy vessels intercepting torpedoes by jamming the signal. She had the idea to use the mechanism from a self-playing piano to change the frequency of a torpedo in sync with the broadcasting signal. Both the broadcaster and the receiver would change frequencies in tandem, like 2 pianos playing in sync. She hired her friend George Antheil to create the device, which was then given to the military for free. It was never used by the Navy because it was too large to fit into a torpedo and other methods had already been created to solve the problem. Story 12. Dr. Sir Brian Harold May, legendary rock star Queen guitarist, songwriter, and sometime vocalist, has a legitimate PhD in astrophysics, estimated IQ of 180, collaborates with NASA and the European Space Agency, renowned expert at stereoscopic 3D photography and historian of its origins, has published multiple books on the subject, including Queen in 3D, consisting of stereoscopic photos taken by himself and others on their many tours. He is also deeply involved in animal rescue and conservation causes, especially when it comes to European badgers, hedgehogs, and foxes. Founder of the Save Me Trust to benefit wildlife rescue work. Owner of the London Stereoscopic Company and of B&G Brian May Guitars. Like seriously, Sir Brie, leave some brains and talent for the rest of us. Story 13. James Doohan, aka Scotty from the original Star Trek. He first saw combat with the Canadian 3rd Infantry Division, landing in the second wave on Juno Beach on D-Day. He personally shot 2 enemy snipers before being hit by 6 rounds from friendly fire, 4 in his leg, 1 in the chest, and 1 through his right middle finger. The bullet to his chest was stopped by a silver cigarette case given to him by his brother. His right middle finger had to be amputated, something he would conceal on screen during most of his career as an actor, sometimes with a flesh-colored glove with a forked finger. Doohan then graduated from Air Observation Pilot Course 40 with 11 other Canadian artillery officers as a pilot artillery spotter. Although he was never actually a member of the RCAF, Doohan was once labeled the craziest pilot in the Canadian Air Force. In the late spring of 1945, he slalomed a plane between telegraph poles to prove it could be done, earning himself a serious reprimand. I met him 40 years ago at a convention, a precursor to current Comic Cons today. Everyone had gone to lunch, but there was about 10 people milling about. He and his driver for the day stopped by the con, and I spent a good 45 minutes schmoozing with him. When the rest of the conventioneers got back, we had this amazing story to tell them. They were all pissed they missed him. He was very kind, very patient, and he was my first fandom crush. Story 14. Dee Snider, who talked before Congress to explain that heavy metal isn't satanic and should be treated as a legitimate form of music. That presentation did a lot to combat the satanic panic that was going on at the time. Fred Rogers convinced Congress to continue funding public television for the purpose of educating children. Keanu Reeves remains humble in the face of stardom and actually learned gun techniques for a film, but continues to train long after the film was done shooting. Prince spent a lot of time and money helping children learn and practice music, going so far as to fund an entire school that was struggling. MC Hammer retired from the limelight and spends his time as a pastor in a small-town church, is very active in his community and always takes time to listen to kids, often gives advice to upcoming amateur artists on the ins and outs of the music industry, often going so far as to spend time listening to their demo tapes. Andre the Giant. He was the nicest, gentlest man you'll ever meet. He would often take time to just chill with fans. He was a very humble man. I had the opportunity to have lunch with him. He treated me and a few other employees at a Blockbuster he frequented. Jude was so nice. Story 15. Joey Dunlop. Dunlop lies second on the list of all-time victories at the Isle of Man TT races behind his nephew, Michael Dunlop. During the course of his career, Dunlop secured a total 26 race wins at the Isle of Man TT, including 3 hat tricks, and 24 wins at the Ulster Grand Prix. He was awarded the MB in 1986 for his contributions to the sport and the OBE in 1996 for his humanitarian work in Romanian orphanages. After his death, the Joey Dunlop Foundation was established to provide accommodation for disabled visitors to the Isle of Man. Dunlop's legacy includes the Joey Dunlop Cup, awarded to the most successful rider at the annual TT races, and several memorials and statues in his honor. Dunlop's career was documented in several films. His record at the T is even more impressive when you consider how many fewer races there were when he was still competing. Yet, it never went to his head, and he used to drive around the Romanian orphanages himself. Absolute hero. Sorel Book, many roles, but most notably Boss Hogg from the Dukes of Hazzard. Served in the United States Army during the Korean War for 2 years as a counterintelligence officer. Bookie was fluent in French, Japanese, Spanish, Russian, and Italian. He said that he also fussed with a half-dozen other languages, such as Arabic, Mandarin Chinese, Dutch, Persian, Polish, and Swedish. In his spare time, he was a guest conductor at the Buffalo Philharmonic Orchestra. Pretty interesting and accomplished even outside his lengthy and varied acting career. Alright folks, that's a wrap. If you like this, please hit the thumbs up and subscribe to the channel. You can also share your thoughts in the comment below.